Hi friends, this is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average Canadian wolfpack come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A safe space where being yourself is the ultimate goal. Each week we will bring you new episodes sharing our opinions on a ton of different topics in hopes we can get a better understanding of ourselves, each other, and this crazy world we live in. We want to build a community where we can show up as ourselves, be real, and lay it all out there. By sharing our opinions and experiences, we hope to reach others who can relate so we can all help each other learn, grow, and heal. But please keep in mind, as a disclaimer, none of us here are professionals. No one is giving any advice. We are strictly speaking of our life experiences, our opinions, and for entertainment purposes only. Now, with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Being Real With. This is a part of the Be Real Babe podcast where we get back to our roots and we talk to our friends, family, community, ourselves about our opinions, our feelings, our experiences, whatever the fuck we want. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy and I am the host of the show. And today, you guys, we are on episode 129, Being Real With B, Home Edition. So a little plot twist, you guys. As things happen, our schedule did not line up with the next guest I'm being real with. So I am going to jump in for my first ever solo episode of just me talking some shit, or not talking shit, but talking about my hometown, because I will be going there. And as this episode launches, I will be in Port Alberni. And I just thought this might be a fun episode to try and, just share a little bit more about my time in my hometown and a little bit more about it if you guys ever want to go there. And we're just talking about what we want to do for season 6 and what that kind of looks like in the fall. And I know that we keep saying that we're going to have tiny episodes and try and get to those like half an hour ones and little ones and see how those do. And when we get together, we really cannot stop talking. So it's just not possible for us as a team to have any episodes less than an hour. So I thought I would jump on today and end of May long weekend and do a solo episode, just me, and chat about my time growing up in Port Alberni and just some fun things about my hometown. But before we do that, I'm going to say, as I always do, and I'm going to continue doing forever, just making sure that you are on, if you're on YouTube or Rumble, make sure that you are subscribing and turning on those notification bells and like this video if you can. It helps tell YouTube that you like us, and it helps us when we get censored from shows, because I'm sure some of our upcoming shows are going to get censored if they haven't already. So that really helps us out, guys. Make sure to follow there. As mentioned, if you are listening on the audio platforms like Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts, you can also follow us there and turn on notifications. On Apple, you can leave us a review. That really, really helps us. Just give your babe some stars. And then, of course, if you are on social media, you can like us on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. Reach out to us there if you have a show or Being Real With segment you would like to be a part of, or if on our regular topics you want us to talk about something, then please let us know. Oh, this is going to be fun by myself. Oh my God, I'm going to sputter down so many holes. This is going to be great. Anyways, guys, so like, subscribe, follow, all of those things. So let's get into Port Alberni. So for those that don't know, I am from Port Alberni, which is on Vancouver Island in British Colombia, Canada. I'm not sure for where you guys are tuning in from and what episodes you have listened to, but I grew up there. I was born in 1986 down there, and I lived there until I was about, oh gosh, I think it was like 2021. I got the fuck out of there. I moved to Red Deer and then moved up to Grand Prairie. Stayed there for about a decade and then moved back. This is about Port Alberni. So Port Alberni is, let's see what Wikipedia has to say. I kind of Googled some things on here and was kind of giggling. So Port Alberni is located on Vancouver Island, as mentioned, in BC. The city lies within the Alberni Valley at the head of the Alberni Inlet, Vancouver Island's longest inlet. We just have so many claims to fame. It is the location of head offices of the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. Port Alberni has a total current population of 18,259. So I guess when you think about, certain cities that people are in across the country, Port Alberni is a very small town. But then sometimes I talk to some people who grew up in towns of like 400 or 500 people, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I did grow up with a lot more than that. So I don't know. for what it's like now. I know that a lot of schools have changed and things have changed over time. But when I was living there and born and raised, I just said, Alberni elementary school was where I went to elementary school, and then it was kindergarten to grade six. And I know things have changed. I think they even changed when my brothers were going through school when I was a teenager. I don't understand why they change things all the time. I imagine kind of ebbing and flowing with population, I would imagine, has a lot to do with that. But yeah, so kindergarten, I went to preschool too as well. French playtime, I was in French immersion for those that don't know that. Graduated in with a bilingual diploma. No, I don't use it as much right now, but it has come up in my current life. Is kind of funny. My spouse works for a company that's the Canadian head office is in Quebec, so everyone speaks French there. So it's kind of come full circle. And then with my own company, not my own company, but the company I work for, we sell products in Quebec, and I have to talk to the boards over there, and all of our products over there in French as well. So it's kind of funny how that came full circle. But yeah, so I was in French playtime. My grandma was my nan was one of the um, teachers there, so it was really great. I got to spend time with her there. And then yeah, I went through French immersion, and Alberni Elementary was the only school at the time, I don't know if that changed, that had French immersion. So we were the same kids in school. I think, we probably had around 27-30 kids from kindergarten to grade six all together. And then I went to the miss school that is no longer open, called Mount Klitsa. And you know how that always, such a small town, so it's funny when you say rivalries, but there was three three middle schools in Port when I was in junior high school, and we went to Mount Klitsa because I lived there, and again it was the French immersion. Classes were in that one, so naturally I had to go there. And I think just like in most places, you went to school by your area. Not that Port Alberni was huge, but big enough that it warranted different elementary schools and junior high schools. And oddly enough, everyone was crammed in the same high school. So I don't know, maybe just not as many people made it to high school. I don't know. But yeah, we're part of Klitsa, where the French were, and French kids were. And I love that. Junior high school, I think my favorite memories are definitely like, well, I mean, the fashion then was just amazing. I just, or the dances and stuff like that. I just think, even though we were part of French classes, we were blended more into more English classes then. And for those, if you are listening, that were in French immersion, I feel like we were kind of given a disservice a little bit, our generation of French immersion, because it was like their, I don't know, testing grounds, because it was like, I just remember everything was in French, absolutely everything. And then when we got to junior high school, um, there would be like PE would be in English, which is fine, which is great because that's what I spoke. No one spoke French at home for me, so the more English was better for me. And then music then turned into English, and like all these classes started turning from completely French to English. And I don't know if that was just like a shortage with the teachers, if that was a change in the curriculum, I don't know. But I remember going into grade 9 math, and I had done math in French my whole school career. So I walk in and I can see like a handful of kids that were, and remember, I was in every single class was all the same kids for every subject. And English kids would switch around, but the French kids, we were always together. So when you went into a class and all of a sudden the people that you went to school with, like in everything, weren't there, it was like a huge red flag. And then all of a sudden I'm like fucking panicking because I'm like, am I in the wrong class? Like, what is going on? And then we find out that no, they're just switching the curriculum, and now math from grade 8 French is now going into grade 9 English math. Which I know it sounds stupid because it's numbers, so you'd think that like, oh, that should be super easy for you to just flip over, but it's not. They do write numbers differently, with a comma instead of a dot. And again, things that don't seem that hard, when you're at that age, especially going through French immersion and not having anybody French at home, and you're trying to learn, how to understand life in English because you're just strictly in French. This is kind of diverting from Port Alberni, but this is where I experienced that. And yeah, so that kept happening throughout my school career, where I think the only class that didn't switch over to full English were like, obviously core French classes and social studies. But same thing, I went to go in grade 10 into high school, and ADSS, they had one high school there. It's been torn down ever since. Doesn't surprise me. I'm pretty sure that place was fucking haunted, like most places there are. And they have a new beautiful high school now. But the old one, yeah, gross. And I went in to go pick my classes, and there wasn't any French classes. I had to pick English, science, and in French immersion, maybe now they do it, but it's like, you don't learn, that this is a cup and then this is, whatever it is in French. You don't learn, science and biology you just learn it in French as if that is your first language. So then going into English, I was like, I don't know what any of this is. I don't know the translation to any of these things. I felt really stupid, to be quite honest with you. It was quite a disservice. I feel like that kind of happened, and I don't know if anybody else had ever felt that way. And I think it's very great. I think it's amazing. Just getting back into loving, French, and we joke around the house now, and it's definitely more of a positive thing. But when I went through school, it was like a very, very stressful time. No one around me spoke French in my outside life. And so it was like, I was getting A's and excelling really well, especially in English classes. But, some of the French stuff, especially when it switched, and all of a sudden now I had to understand biology and science and all that in English. And I was like, I barely understood it in fucking French. Now I got to figure it out again in English. And a lot of kids adapted. They were really great, but that wasn't my forte. Science wasn't my forte, like language arts and art in general. And all that kind of stuff was more my forte. So I struggled with that quite a bit, even though I still graduated with really good, straight A's for the most part, some B's. Like I was pretty good at that. But that was, yeah, so that was an interesting part. I feel like it was really cool though, being a small town and still having those opportunities. And I still think it is an amazing opportunity. I just don't think that all subjects and everything should be in French if you're not surrounded by it. I think there maybe could be levels, and that would be cool. Like you can learn everything, learn how to fully communicate, read maps, travel, do the things that you would need to do in French while learning basic stuff in the language as your first language. But I mean, live and learn, right? So there's a side story. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to say too much, but here we go already. So, yeah, grew up there, went to ADSS, graduated. I did 1 year of college there at North Island College. They have a college there I feel like has quite a bit of opportunity there. And throughout the island, there's lots of places that kids can go. A lot of times I always felt like it was such a small town. There's not very much opportunity, but we kind of like dial out, there is actually quite a bit of opportunity just right on the island. It's a beautiful place to live. It's, there is opportunity there for sure. I'm not going to discredit that. But I like high energy. So I feel even like Victoria is like, it's a beautiful city. It's gorgeous there. But, I like the speed of Kelowna and the busyness of it and the like ever evolving, constantly developing kind ofness. But it's so beautiful to go home. So yeah, so I went to college for a year, did business admin because I had no fucking idea what I wanted to do. But I was just like, hey, if I do this, at least I can get my foot in the door. And then I worked at a company called Columbia Fuels right out of graduating from college. It was amazing working with a family there. They're a great family. It felt really nice. It kind of made me like have a vision of being like, yeah, I think this is, I don't really matter kind of what office work I do, but I feel like this is what I can do. Like, it really serves my OCD. It really, and again, I was working with this family and they were so tight knit, but funny and great. And, I'm pretty sure they're still running it now. And, recession hit Port, after about, I think it was like a year of working there. So naturally, I got let go. Is totally understandable. So then I started waitressing because, what else do you really do? I didn't really know what I wanted to do. There wasn't really a lot of jobs. It's again, 18,000 people, but I found at that time, it was like, unless you knew someone, it was really hard to get office job. And I always kind of wanted to work at the school board. But even then those jobs were really hard because, not many people. So you had to kind of wait for people to retire, and not like in Alberta where there's, admin jobs through the fucking wazoo. And like, here in Kelowna, there's so much going on. It's not quite the same there. So I waitress, and I love waitressing. I waitress at a restaurant. I don't believe it's open anymore, but it was Swale Rock and it was just above the harbor. I loved it there. I loved working with the girls there. I worked there with a couple girlfriends, and their food was great. I loved all the tourists that came in because it was just above the harbor quay, and there was just so many people from all across the world. And with social anxiety, waitressing really helped like kind of break that. You really just didn't have a choice. And I liked being able to make more money on tips and stuff. I really enjoyed that. And I was able to have fun through the summer and, kind of work split shifts and enjoy Port. And then, yeah, so I find Port was such a beautiful place to grow up. I think that I did not appreciate it as much as I should have when I lived there, but I think that's just natural. When I go back now, I go back as much as possible. Obviously, over the last couple of years with the pandemic, it's been a little bit harder. And now that I live in a very beautiful place, in my opinion, it's one of the nicest places to live in in British Columbia. I absolutely love Kelowna, and it gives me everything that I kind of need. So when I was living in Grand Prairie, I would definitely spend every summer. You know, you don't get very much vacation, like what 2 weeks. We'd save that for Christmas, and every summer, instead of like going somewhere out in the world, I would go home to Port to see everyone and to because it's beautiful there. You know, you got everything you need. You have lakes, and you can go hiking, and there's just so much to do. The backyard in the island is just it's absolutely stunning. I highly recommend people going, and all up and down the island there's beautiful places to go. Like Parksville is, you know, such a beautiful place, in Qualicum if you're looking for, you know, more of like I don't know, I'd say more of like a city beach place, you know, where it's kind of more modernized beach, ocean, you know, lots of retirement there, like nice and slow and relaxed. Whereas if you keep going past Port and you're going into like, you know, Ucluelet and Tofino and places like that, like you're really getting into like hippie town where you really get to slow down, you know. I remember going there as, you know, as a teenager, like end of teens, like early 20s before I moved. And I kind of forgot that everything shut down at like 8 o'clock, even like the grocery stores. Like there's not even like, I don't even remember there being a fucking gas station open. And you just, you know, there's no fast food restaurants there. It's truly just like appreciating and living very simple and off the land, like, you know, with food that are local. And it makes you really disconnect. The services out there is, you know, not the greatest. And it just helps you get in touch with nature. I think that's the whole beauty of the island, and I notice it more and more as I age, especially coming back to BC, is just the island's a very good place to slow down and just appreciate everything. And you know, just that's I kind of feel like it same with Kelowna. Like there's just like little Port Alberni is not in the sense where you feel like there's city, but there's still like, you know, there's community. There's really good community there. Everyone is very supportive around there, and I think it is very beautiful. Very very nice place to raise a family if you can find like a good job, and you know things don't cost as nearly as much as they do in Kelowna. You know, and they're very well known for a lot of beautiful things. Like for those that don't know, I'm gonna Google some pieces here, but the Mars, the water bomber, I think that's probably my favorite thing about growing up in Port is, you know, my grandparents had a place on the lake for some time, and as a kid, I always got to watch the water bomber take off and come back. And we'd go out there on the canoe and go right up to them, and I just remember being so blown away by them, and equally confused as, you know, teenager and young adult watching parts of the province burn down while this big beautiful machine I've watched dump water for fun over the lake as a kid time and time again is not helping, you know, things burn down. That's probably when I started my tin hat, probably I would say is, you know, one time I was at home, it's probably like 10 years ago now, and I remember sitting at my grandpa's cabin out the lake, and across the lake saw there was a fire that was started, and I was sitting there and ashes were kind of like falling over on my grandpa's cabin, and they've had this for forever. Like they built the road going down there. It was just a whole thing. It's a huge piece of our family memory, and like just everything. So many memories are at the lake. So I'm just like freaking the fuck out because, you know, it seems like it's everything's on fire. It's not only that, it's burning down other people's. Not as many. It wasn't as populated as across the way, but and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the Mars and I'm watching this burn, and I'm understanding where the owners are like where they're tied, and I'm not, you know, upset with them. I understand, but thinking just like the government, you know, when people say like, you know, though that's not it, you're a conspiracy theorist. I look back to those moments and I'm sitting there and I have a picture of me sitting at my grandpa's cabin, and it's on fire and the Mars is sitting right there. Like, and I understand that costs money, and I understand that comes to it, but like, why couldn't there even be like a crowdfunding option of being like, okay, guys, to get that up in the air for X amount of hours? Like, I don't know. There's just got to be better options. And like, why aren't we replicating in this day and age like the same type of machine? And again, I don't know, guys. I'm just speculating. It's my tin hat. It's just like these are things I always wonder, and I think that's kind of sometimes where my bigger like conspiracy tin hat climate change theories kind of come from. And I'm like, I've watched the weirdest shit happen where it's like we know that those things can work, but then they get sent down to the States and they use them down there because the government doesn't want to pay them up here. And of course, they have to make money to continue to have them. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's more to it, but just always things that I found kind of weird. But another thing that's kind of interesting about Port that I always thought was kind of funny, and I know it's always been an ongoing joke now, is I don't know when that came to be, but Port Alberni at one point got labeled the worst place to live, and it was like a hashtag. And I always thought that that was kind of wild, where I understood that like trying to get a job there is hard for sure. Like I understand that that could be hard, and it must be so great if you wanted to stay there and you found a good job and you can live that life. That's what I thought I was going to do too, and it just didn't seem to work for me at the time, and it just kind of seemed like clear signals to leave. But I just thought that was funny. It was always like hashtag worst place to live, when I'm just like, I don't believe that. I believe it's a hard place to live if you get a job, but if you can get a job and support your family there, I think it's amazing place to live for sure. It's also nicknamed in a positive way the heart of Vancouver Island, partially because of the welcoming community, but also because of its location. The central location makes it a convenient community to live, especially for those that love to travel. Yeah, Port's really in the middle place. What I loved about it is that, within an hour and a half, you could be in Tofino and Ucluelet. Within, half an hour and 20 minutes, you could be at Sprout Lake, or you could be at Great Central. There's two, really beautiful lakes with two different atmospheres and different people too. There's Sprout is obviously the busier one. We're a little bit warmer, a lot more beaches to get to. Where Great Central, like, they had their own life. I remember growing up there as a kid, going camping out there, and just the float houses were my favorite thing. I just to this day think that float houses are the just coolest thing ever. And if I had a fuck ton of money, I would definitely be buying one out there. I just think it's beautiful. There's a place where there's like a natural water slide, and it's absolutely beautiful. The water is just so crisp and clean, and Great Central really has its own beauty, whereas like Sprout Lake is like, I grew up out there. I grew up with my grandparents having a house out there. I absolutely loved it. They had a bunny cage, and they just had all this property. And I remember, even this is terrible, getting cedar itch from all the fucking geese poop and being like covered in it, having to put like chamomile lotion on it. And but I still to this day, like, I vividly remember that house out at the lake. And I remember living in Alberta and just craving, and I've said this to people before, that's why I love living back in Kelowna. I would just crave the vegetation, like the moss and the pine. Like, you really, if there's just a certain different about the outside here. And even like in the worst times, even just sitting on the back patio, even through the lockdowns, I just remember feeling so blessed, being like, at least I have this like earth. I don't know what it was. It's just like this like need to get back to nature. And I think BC really hasn't. I'm not discrediting Alberta, like there's beauty out there, but when you grow up in this, kind of environment, you really miss it. And just like that air that you breathe from being around lots of vegetation. Um, One other thing that I found interesting growing up that I always, talk about is tsunami warning. So there's a place in Port Alberni, there's a certain part on Johnson Road on the way down, like part of the highway, where it is like, above tsunami and below tsunami. So as a kid in the elementary school, I remember doing all these drills where we would do this tsunami would alarm. And it's like the craziest noise. I remember always being like terrified of hearing it as a kid. And we'd all have to walk up to the tsunami line. And I always remember feeling a lot safer because my entire family lived above that line. And I always felt very safe knowing that, if something happened, at least my family and our houses and all that was above that. And I always felt good about that. And I always felt very scared. Or if I rented, like I had rented down below, like right at the bottom one time. And I remember always like, especially with anxiety, being like, oh my God, one day it's just going to wipe me out, and then you just smoke weed and then you forget about it. But Port was hit with a wave just after midnight on March 27th, 1964. And then another towering wave after came over. And I don't believe that there's ever been any other tsunami since. There's been warnings, but I don't think there ever was after that. I think 64. Obviously, I wasn't born then, but Port Alberni got its name. The inlet was named after Don Pedro de Alberni, the Spanish officer in command of the Nootka garrison in 1791 during the Spanish occupation. So interesting. Funny that you don't think about these things until you're out of them. But one other thing that Port's always been known for, and I don't know if the salmon festivals are as good as they used to, but I remember growing up as a teenager and in my early 20s, and I would always try to come back for the Salmon Festival in September, Labor Day weekend. There was always a huge salmon festival where everyone got together and, went out on the boats and everyone came in for the biggest fish. And there's always this festival and beer gardens. And I remember being a teenager and just cannot wait to get into the beer gardens. It's so funny the things that you get excited about. I'm so excited to be caged into an fenced off area of tarps with a bunch of drunk people drinking draft beer out of a cup. But that was so exciting at the time, and I would still go and do it now because that is just what you did. And there was entertainment and there was food, and there was just everything. It felt like if you were out of town, you were coming home that weekend. It just felt like a time that everyone got together. You got to see a bunch of people. There was always parties all over the place, and it was just a time that, yeah, if you wanted to see anybody or yourself come home, that was a really good time to do that because, back then, obviously I'm old and I don't want to go out now, and I barely tell people I'm coming home. But it was a really good time, especially when I first moved away to Alberta to come back. Because, yeah, salmon capital of the world with the inlet. What was it say? In fact, it's known as the salmon capital of the world, as all 5 types of Pacific salmon can be found in the waters around here. From watching the salmon run to magical hikes and fantastic restaurants, Port Alberni has so many things to do. And it really does. Like, I will 100% say that. Like I said, if you can have a good job there, housing, I feel like, is affordable. It's beautiful there. It's not too far of a drive. So, like, being that center, you can, like I said, you can go to the West Coast and completely disconnect if, you queue it and, live that life, or you can kind of go a little bit more to Nanaimo. If you want to jump on the ferry, you can go over to Vancouver. If you want to head up, you can go to or head down. Sorry, if you can go to Victoria. Have a little bit more city life. On the way, there's so many different places. Like Port really is a good central area where an hour and a half, 2 hours, max 3, you're in a whole other area. But cost effective wise, it is a good place for that. So I will agree, it's not an expensive place. Oh, who is the most famous person from Port Alberni? Scott Vicarius was born in 1975 in Port Alberni on Vancouver Island. I don't know who that is. I guess we have a famous guy that's a little. But yeah, I think Port Alberni is. I'm recording this now before I go. I go in a week, like I said. Plot twist. Let's have like kind of filler episode. But I will be there when this launches, and I'm very excited to. One thing that I hated about Port, which now living in a place where it's always super hot and we hope for rain, the one thing I used to hate and probably still would if I moved there is the amount of rain, because the one thing that is beautiful is that there's mountains and ocean. That is what Port Alberni is. It's a valley, right? So get down into the valley. It is beautiful. I'm really grateful because I've never felt claustrophobic. I know some people that lived in Alberta or, flatter lands that come there, it's like it's super claustrophobic driving into Port. With Cathedral Grove all the way through with just the big trees and mountains everywhere. But once you get in there and then the rain comes in, I remember it would just rain for days and days and days. And that was the one thing that I remember loving about Alberta is like, I rarely got to see rain. It was kind of like super hot or like windy all the fucking time, like rain for 3 seconds and then just full of fucking snow. So I remember loving the snow more. And now as, I spent 10 years in that snow, I'm like, actually, I miss that. And the thing about Port is having that much rain, it is beautiful. It's so luscious. It is a really good place for wildlife to grow, for fishing, all those kind of things where all those logging and fishing and all that is really huge. Another thing that I feel is really cool, if you guys have not seen the Netflix series Big Timber on Netflix. It is a really good, it's a good series. I don't know. I guess I grew up because I have a family full of vloggers and they do stop in Port Alberni, but they stop along the island in places that I know. And a girl I grew up with, her dad is on the show, which was kind of cool to see. And I don't know, it just brings me back home. We kind of joked about it, like, that just, I could smell the TV and, it made me really excited to kind of go home and see that stuff because Port is such a place where it's like, really hard workers, really hands-on stuff. We've got fishermen there, loggers. I know those industries aren't as bumping. They had the mill, they had all of that. And at that time, at certain times, it was really great. And I really, I always hope for that to turn around because, it's got so many beautiful things. Like the lake just being right there, the heat is unmatched. And you actually I wish it would snow, honestly, as much as I hate snow, but I wish it would snow a little bit more in the winters. That's one thing I find of Kelowna a little bit more is that we have a lot more snowier winters, which I just find is a little bit more Christmassy, but I also hate driving in the snow. So it's like, but I also hate driving in a lot of rain. So, that is, but why those things are important is so fucking beautiful there. And I think that's one big contribution reason why Port never really suffers from like they've had their fires, don't get me wrong, that's been a thing, but not nearly as much as, let's say, the Okanagan, and like those kind of areas. So I do think that all that rain does help with that. So there are the positives and minuses of it. But I'm very excited to go back. There's certain restaurants that I absolutely love that I'm super stoked to go back to. Hopefully this weekend we'll be able to go, me and Grant, and hopefully go with some family. But obviously in the family, JNL will always be one of my favorite. I grew up on that. I have family that is part of it, part owning it, part working there. Like, it's a part of everything. Everyone can definitely say when you go home, you go for a J&L burger and shake. It's got the, they still do the drive-in, which, back in the, I don't know if they still do. I can't quite remember if everyone's still on rollerblades, but they were, I'm sure they still are, but maybe not in the winter, but they used to be on rollerblades for sure. But their food is just like bar none. Cannot wait to have that. Obviously, a little Bavaria, if you've been there, is great German food. They have the best. It just reminds me as a kid. When I was a kid, actually, when I was like in grade six, there's pictures of it. Grade six, I think it was, maybe even younger than that. To be honest with you, most kids would ask to go to McDonald's. I would ask to go to Little Bavaria. I was a very bougie child, and it was my favorite place to go. And there's pictures of me as a kid there. It's just a very, very delicious German restaurant. So we will be going there. And actually, a guy that I went to high school with, he owns it now and is running it. So I also obviously would love to support local restaurants, especially those that have saved it and carried on for its glory. And where else are we going to go? There's a Mountain View bakery, one of my favorite bakeries on planet Earth. Their desserts are like no other. Like, honestly, guys, I'm just going home to eat, and hopefully we'll be able to go to the gym over there, but we don't have time because I'll be having to work. Fortunately or fortunately, I'm just so busy that I'm not going to be able to actually take the full time off. So I will be working some time while I'm there, but at nighttime and at lunch, I do want to go and have lunches and, get to enjoy it while also just getting some work done so it doesn't pile up. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Little Valley Deli Boomerang, which was really cool to see. They are on the show Big Tinder. They do go have lunch there, which is really great because I do believe I don't know if because they didn't serve alcohol, there's something during the pandemic they were not charging. So, there's people that I care about, that, including my mom, that was able to go there and eat because she wasn't discriminated against because of the mandate. So I definitely want to go there and make sure I support them when I go home. And there's just a list, you guys. Like, I cannot wait to go out to the lake. I cannot wait to just see stuff, whether it's nice or not, just to be home in Port. It is a beautiful place. If you are ever going to, go traveling there, make sure, definitely if you're going to the island, go there. It's so gorgeous. Go see the water bombers, go to Sprout Lake, go to Great Central. There's tons of restaurants on the way there. My favorite place, and I don't know if they've rebuilt it. I apologize, guys. It's been a while. I haven't been back since September, and I don't know. But there was Whiskey Creek that always had a ton of ice cream. So hopefully that's been rebuilt. I can't quite remember, but I remember always stopping there, in or out. We always got ice cream there. Stopping at Cathedral Grove, like I said, going all the way through and going to Tofino, Nuculate, beautiful places to go. In Port, there's tons. Hopefully, if it's still open, is Pescadores. I love going there. They have the best French toast on fucking earth. Oh my God, I swear, I'm just going home to eat food. Like, I could keep going. There's so many different ones. Like, the golf courses always have good restaurants there. That's one thing I will say about small towns, is I always find that they have the best restaurants because, it's not like overpopulated. So it's like all the best, like really good chefs. It's like they have to be really good because there's not many, but Port is filled with lots of local restaurants. And that is one of my favorite things to support there. So very much looking forward to that, even though it'll be the fastest trip ever. I'm very excited, and hopefully, hey, maybe we can go back for Salmon Fest and I can come report back to you guys what that was like. But it's just a really great place. It's a great place to raise a family. And if you ever get told that you need to relocate there, it is a slower city for sure. It is definitely island life. I think, if we had the opportunity to retire there, I definitely think that wouldn't be, I'm as much as I love Kelowna, it'd be a battle, but I wouldn't be opposed to it, especially at that, later part of your life, or the part of your life where you just really want to focus on your kids and you don't want the noisy and the crazy. There is noisy and crazy there. I will say, I don't handle the fucking Facebook groups properly. Okay. I cannot stand them. And there is downfalls to small towns, like drama when you're in high school, still attaches. And I'm sure there are people that when I roll into Port, they're going to have things about the Jag and have some things to say, I'm sure. But it just, I still love it. I still think small towns are great. I think Port is a great place. Like I said, if you are wanting that island life, it's like Hawaii rainforest mix. It's, there's lots of opportunities for kids in sports and community there. It's beautiful. And just myself, I was in a very toxic place in my life. I was not making good choices. I was not, in the proper environment, and I needed to learn how to be an adult and to stand on my own 2 feet and, kind of make up for stupid mistakes that I had made when I lived there. And moving to Alberta did that to me, and I'm really glad I did, but I'm glad that I'm back in BC because I love it here, and I'm very excited to be going down to the island and seeing, my favorite places and my favorite people, and eating at my favorite restaurants, and hopefully going to Alberni Fitness and maybe get 1 or 2 workouts there, because we do love going there every time, but time is limited, so we will see. But guys, I did it. A 35-minute episode about my hometown, the neat things about it. Yeah, I guess we'll find out if you guys like these kind of episodes. I'm hoping for season 6 that we'll be able to do maybe some solo episodes like this, a little bit shorter ones, so that, if you're looking for just a quick one, a little quickie on your drive out. I used to do this for Patreon, and like I said, there's big things coming in the fall. In season 6, we have other things where, you'll probably see more things like this, more behind the scenes of the podcast as we grow, and we're turning this more into, I'll leave that, but more things are coming, and so there'll be subscriptions, there'll be things, there'll be exclusive videos that like we used to have on Patreon, just not on a platform that's gonna silence us, because I'm not fucking for it. But you guys, I hope you're enjoying season 6 so much. I hope you're enjoying these Being Real with. Let us know if you like these little quick episodes. I'm going to shut up so I can actually make it a quick and easy episode. But I'm going to say, as always, guys, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, follow, comment for engagement, message us if you have any video suggestions and you want to be on the show. Any of those things, let us know. We fucking love you. Until next time, bye. Thank you guys so much for stopping by the show today. We truly hope that you had a good time. If you liked this episode and you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe to our channels, like our episodes, and turn on those notification bells. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, and Google Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest. Until next time, guys.